After I went to the workshop in Colorado, I asked Steve Allen if we couldn't do another workshop on my property, and we kept in communication. And as I kept researching, I kept saying, I've got to do this. You know, everything said yes. You know, we think about who builds a house, from the designer to the guy who nails the, you know,
the
studs.
engineer and...
Yeah, there are many different elements there, and we have a status quo of a way of doing things that is resistant to disruption. So again,
good statement.
This connects to a larger problem. Ending COP26. Very hard for wealthy countries to change the way they do things. Divesting from oil. Because, but look how this connects. I mean, every construction project around has a building wrap made out of plastic. The cheapest one is Tyvek, Dow Chemical. The same people that, you know, are causing, you know, all kinds of chemical pollution, but they have tremendous power. So all these problems are interconnected. And they're very sensitive, and they're very hard for the people who have the power to talk about and to adjust and change. Exactly the problem at COP21 is a problem relating to the building industry's ability to change or not change.
Yeah. We talked earlier about cement.
Yeah.
And how energy intensive it is to produce. And how negative. I mean, some of the base of some of the various hemp homes have some cement at the base and on the ground part, but not in the envelope, you know, of the house, which is it's not helpful to the direction that a lot of us would like to see our building industry go. You know, it's a change.
Yeah. I mean, the people in the Post-Carbon Institute and Architecture 2030 and so on are very focused for the whole building industry on getting the carbon emissions and the inefficiency of cement making solutions to that. Because at one time, I don't know, viewers will have to check my facts, but buildings are responsible for, they thought, about 7% of total carbon emissions around the world.
The elements that are used in constructing buildings.
Well, when you make cement,
right,
you fire it to a very high temperature, and so that dumps a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Some of the things that are added to the cement are likewise energy intensive. And then the sheer volume of concrete that's used around the world to build with. So one of the things that, so this building industry is looking at alternatives. And a lot of people would ask me, can you use hempcrete instead of concrete for foundations and for buildings? And the answer is no, it's not. It's not equitable. It's this is above ground material. It's not structural. It's not, well, you know, last night the wind was blowing, probably 50 miles an hour, and the house is not swaying. I mean, the old wooden house, even though it was well built, you could feel some movement in the house.
But you have rebarb.
I have some structural reinforcement, but even so, it's almost common sense that as you have this material hardening around your studs, instead of fiberglass bad insulation surrounding your studs, and then some sheeting material on the outside, this is much more supportive. But the point is that where concrete is used in foundations and skyscrapers and, you know, places like that, you have to have a compact something that will support weight on top of it.
Right.
Whereas where cheap cement is used around the world, places like Nepal, where they had an earthquake and buildings fell in on people, Haiti, Mexico City, much of South and Central America, all over the world, cement is used as a building material because it's cheap. And so it might not be high quality cement, but it still is fired and so on. Whereas above ground, the binder in Hempcrete is lime. And so when you make lime, you take that same limestone and you fire it to about 900 degrees Celsius. And it retains some of its porosity. When you use that limestone in cement, you're firing it to 1250 degrees. And then you're adding other minerals that are ground up, basically ground glass and clay and so on, so that it has this hydraulic set and it holds back water and it has high compaction and so on. You don't need that over your head, you know, where cement roofs fell on people's heads and killed them. You don't need them in above ground walls.
Right. You can use hempcrete.
You can use the same lime fired at a temperature that requires 80% less energy.
Right.
And use a bioaggregate instead of stone and gravel, and you have a better wall system.
Plus, it has, if you want it to take down a wall made of hempcrete, it can be, has another life. It can be broken down and taken back to the earth, right? Well, show us over here, because I was so very much love what you have done on the outside with the wall. Rounding. I love the round corners and the big windows. Yeah. This is and the stairway. That's so beautiful. Again, the feeling, actually you can feel like you're in one of the Atlantic cruise ships, you know, the old ones. Do you know when they walk down the stairway and to the ballroom? It's so pretty. And the way that you have designed to have tell us about the wood and the design that you used here and what inspired it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the curve is kind of taking off on the nautical feel, but the oak is came from the flooring is oak. It's red oak. Comes from nearby, and it has a finish on it. It has a natural finish on it that it doesn't have VOCs, volatile organic compounds, coming off. So one thing led to another. So oak was, you know, the material that I used. And then with the curved design, though, it presented a problem with getting a banister. Building a curved banister, I found actually a boat builder. It will be made out of oak, like the floor, and it'll have strips of oak. And my stone finial.
Well, I just love these walls, the corners.
So these walls are traditional plaster. They're made but with lime, just lime and sand, of grated sand. So there's some fines and then there's a little bit coarser. And then I added the pigment directly to the plaster. In other places, the finishes have some hemp.
Like in the room I'm staying, it has, it's lovely.
Over here has some hemp added to the plaster, and all of this was an experiment because I didn't have any experience with it, and they're not common building materials. Plaster, lath and plaster is thought to be a thing of the past.
Well, not here in America, yes. In Europe, you probably saw when you had various trips over there and various workshops, and you met some real pioneers.
I think it has more to do with the age of the building. because, I mean, I grew up in an old farmhouse that had lath and plaster walls, but that was before we had drywall.
Yeah, I did too. Our farmhouse did.
Yeah, so it's an age factor. And then some of the other finishes I did have some drywall interior walls, and I wanted it to look like the plaster. So there is a kind of a cementatious wall finish that looks like plaster, but it is more like cement. And I did a lot of experimenting. Not all of my experiments worked out. My reason for building this house was to try and just demonstrate that it was possible, first of all, but to inspire other people to do it. Because being not a builder, not having any particular expertise, the materials are not a limitation. So architects can easily learn how to design hempcrete buildings. I want to dispel the myth that it's more expensive, that it's labor intensive, and therefore it's not expensive labor. You know, someone who pounds hempcrete into a form is not an $80 an hour carpenter. You know, depending on which region that you're in. But even more so now, there's technology. When I was in Europe, I saw in 2015, there was in Germany, there was a spray machine that they were just developing and experimenting with, and they had a few glitches, very small scale. In France, there was a machine that was used to spray he said there were 69 machines in operation, spraying about 1,000 houses a year.
That's
in
wonderful.
2015. And they were spraying over the cobblestone homes, making them comfortable. And then in Italy, in a later conference, one of Steve Allen's symposiums, there was a spray machine demonstrating a 5-story apartment building. So at that time, there were options available. Now we have one developed in Scandinavia. We have spray machines showing up on the market. Mm-hmm. So if there were more demand, it's a simple technology. So technology is not holding us back. Architecture is not holding us back. What is holding us back?
What is?
The status quo, the willingness to change, the recognition that we need to change. We're not really grasping the urgency behind the urgency of changing.
Right now. It's the timing right now is so essential.
And I think the house also demonstrates, you don't have to live in a shack to build ecologically sound homes. This is way more house than I need.
It's how many square feet more or less of living space?
It's 3,400 square feet. It's easily enough for 2 families. The original house was smaller, and it was extended family living here. Mm-hmm. So, but the point is that this doesn't have to be a boutique house, and it doesn't have to be an outback house. Hempcrete can be used for any size, shape, design.
That's what I've noticed. I love what you've done here. As I said in the very beginning when I arrived, there's an old world feeling about the design and the layout and just the little touches that you thought about. Yeah, it's lovely. You could do it in a very retro design as well. You can do anything with it. And that's what's so exciting when I took my workshops with hemp. People in the workshops were having great fun.
And Steve Allen's coming out with a new book. I haven't seen it yet. Highland Hemp House is going to be in there.
Oh, congratulations! You didn't tell me earlier.
But I believe that he'll have houses of all sizes and configurations, and showing a range of modest to elaborate to. I'm aware of eco villages being designed with hempcrete.
Where do you think that? Well, I heard of something in Texas taking place, and I heard of another one it's not in Colorado maybe, but
Well, I think the one that I'm aware of is in the Netherlands.
oh yes, I read about that one too. It's very exciting.
Yeah, that's not, the materials themselves don't really have the limitations that we're led to believe are problems, because it's just a matter of education, but it's not technically difficult.
No. All right. Your heating and cooling system.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes. So there's a movement to go to heat exchangers, outside heat exchangers, rather than combustion furnaces or even electric baseboard, because they're very inefficient. Mini split is what we often call them, where this is a system that's actually a little bit more efficient than that, in that it uses hot water. It uses the heat exchanger outside, but it gives me a domestic hot water and heat, and it's also a reversible system. In this climate and with my home design, I really don't need air conditioning. I have good natural ventilation, and in the Northwest, in the past, we're not that hot. Although last summer was above 90-degree days were quite unusual in June. So this system does have the capacity for both heating and cooling, but it is, and again, my numbers, I think about 30% more efficient than the efficient mini split systems, because it operates by heating water to a low temperature.
And you keep, right now, it's so comfortable, and you keep it at a certain temperature.
I think I have them set at 65, but
65.
But it's radiant heat. It's very comfortable. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with a sweater on at that temperature. It might be a little warmer than that.
All right, on water, I see you have a number, when we were walking outside before it started pouring a couple days ago, that you have some rain barrels, or I don't even know if you could say they're rain barrels, but what are those containers, those big ones underneath your deck?
They're 275-gallon, you might call them totes.
Okay.
And I have 3 of them interconnected, just because I have a lot of deck space, and so I could put the totes under the deck, and it's not a water reclamation system for drinking water or even toilets. It's just landscape water.
Landscape water. And why not for the toilets? Do you do any of the gray water system at all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Where do you stop?
It's all right. What about your electricity for your lights and running the various
The house is all electric. There's no combustion. Induction range. And the Chiltrix heating system. And I have 40 photovoltaic solar panels. So I got a rebate check of $3,000 from my excess power.
Lovely.
So I can run a car. I don't have an electric car yet. That's my goal. So the house generates all the power that it needs to run, and probably can run the house and the car. And that's one of the things that I would like to see happen in the housing industry, is if designers paid more attention to orientation, so that they have, like, there's lots of houses getting accolades for being very green because they have a whole bunch of foam in the walls and so on, and they're efficient, they're energy efficient, but the design didn't take into account where the solar panels might go. Right? Sometimes the roof faces north instead of south, and that's one easy fix, relatively easy fix.
I wish, yes, it sounds like all that the research you did and the traveling and the meeting people who've been doing this for decades, being, in the industrial hemp world, that it has paid off enormously, and it's going to continue to pay off in the sense of your wonderful home and creating it, and it shows to other people that it can be done. You were a woman on a mission, and you accomplished it. You're still accomplishing it, and
I
I
wouldn't say
thank
I've
you.
accomplished it until they're, maybe if all the new building projects
Yeah.
had some of the same considerations, then I would feel mission accomplished.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet.
We all just have, each one of us does just a few things in changing our habits. When we're thinking about our children, and you have grandchildren, so you have those in mind, but also about the next generation and just about nature in general. It's so generous with all its beauty and free gifts that she gives us every day, and just to be grateful, and appreciate it. But this is great. Pam?
Well, wait a minute, I think that I want to say something. If we're going to, save the world, not just for our grandchildren, but for the children in the global south, happening right now, then those of us who have the ability to make changes, to adapt, why wouldn't we do that? And if nature is our teacher, then we can recognize that all of these things are interconnected, and we can choose to think in terms of systems that are interconnected and regenerative, especially those of us who have the privilege to make these decisions. And the changes in our behavior have a lot of downstream consequences. But also, we do have to make sacrifices in how we live. We should live more conservatively. But they're not sacrifices that make us unhappy. I would say that they're changes that actually contribute to our quality of life, because when we contribute to the well-being of others, we have a more fulfilled life ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I hope that this house demonstrates that it's certainly not impossible. It's not all that difficult.
No, it's not. Thank you. Okay.